Greetings and welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is September 4th. It is the last weekend without NFL football for a little while. I am Flying Ryan. Ryan Goker's back in Florida along with
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verone. Of course, with 5 days to go, one has to think about the 5 interceptions the Steelers gave to the Browns in that game that will probably go down as one of the wildest games in playoff history. And still, the Steelers almost won that one.
Yeah, the Steelers did not belong in that game, but they got a lot closer than they should have. That was a wild game. There was a game not necessarily as high publicity beforehand, but it became a major story after, and that is a Bradenton team, an IMG Academy versus, I'd say, a high school from Ohio, but I don't know if that's the case. Bishop Sycamore. The Sentinels, they played IMG at the Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio, and got rolled 58-0. Now, why are we talking about a high school football team? Joel, you tell them why we're talking about a high school football team.
Because some of the things that you tend to go down a rabbit hole. Because when you see something like this, you're like, okay, this is an interesting rabbit hole. This is a rabbit hole I want to go down. And the more you go down in this rabbit hole, the more you're like, holy expletive. I can't believe this. Because just on the surface, here are some of the things that sort of pop out. As you look, number one, of course, you have to talk about they ended up playing 2 games within 3 days, and that's apparently,
I think, illegal, honestly.
Fairly big no-no. Yeah. Another thing is that the quote-unquote students none of them were student age, because usually when you think students, when you think high school students flying, how old do you usually think?
At the extremes, 13 to 19. 19 if you have an old senior, and 13 if you have a young freshman, somewhere in that range. IMG, you're probably looking 16 to 19 for their varsity level program. But
we're talking
nothing in the 20s, nothing older than that.
We're talking JUCO dropouts here, and then of course the most next craziest thing was apparently there is no actual physical site for Bishop Sycamore, because usually when you think high school, where do they play? Where's their training facility? Where's their actual site? No site. But wait, as the commercial with the Ginsu knife says, but wait, there's more. The head coach of the team apparently has an arrest warrant out on him that is current. This is the leader of the entire team. So this is just a cluster, I believe, beyond all clusters. And when you get into some more of the nitty gritty, like what the kids were promised, the living conditions that they had to endure, just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy. We'll go back to the coach real quick. Leroy Johnson has an active arrest warrant relating to quote-unquote fraudulent misrepresentation, conversion, and unjust enrichment. Basically, it was a scam for him to get rich. He owes ARN Hospitality $110,685 for not paying any portion of the bill from the hotel where the players were housed, and he also took out a $100,000 loan that he never repaid. He's also got lawsuits from the helmet manufacturer for his team and a busing company for failure to pay.
Because there wasn't enough equipment for the kids that apparently they would have to change helmets. One would give another helmet to another one, and just utter insanity.
So to make this all worse, this game was nationally televised on ESPN. ESPN, they normally find these teams to play the high-ranking top prospect teams, like IMG Academy actually is, the number 2 team in the country. They find these teams to come on and play with them or play against them, and they showcase it. They tried. They couldn't find anybody else, and I mean anybody else. Bishop Sycamore was the only taker, and they got blown out on national television. It was so bad that Anish Shroff and Tom
How bad
Bill on air were going, I don't think this is a real team. This team is so bad. We got fleeced. This is not. They were saying it was a
Worse than oh no, we suck again. Worse.
I mean, they build this as two programs with legitimate next level prospects, 4 and 5 star college level
Bishop
recruits.
Sycamore had allegedly D1 prospects.
Yeah, you have D1 prospects. I know for a fact IMG Academy, Joel, it's 45 minutes from you. It's probably 10 minutes from where I live. I know that's got stud athletes. I know that's got top level prospects. I know that's got people that will eventually end up in the NFL. And to get fleeced and called out on air by the broadcasters is by far the funniest part of this. I am very glad I do not work for ESPN at this point.
Whatever agency was the one that vetted Bishop Sycamore, somebody at the very least, had to be suspended at the very, very least.
Yes. Normally, they go through a company called Paragon to find these opponents and put them together. They were not able to find a team to play IMG.
Must have gone through a company called Paradox in this case.
So Paragon outsourced the efforts to somebody who runs a company called Prep Gridiron Logistics. He contacted an additional 200 schools to play IMG, only found one. Only Bishop Sycamore was willing to play against them, and then everything just exploded around it. So I'm sure somebody at Paragon and somebody at Prep Gridiron Logistics definitely got fired, but ESPN was told, hey, it's supposed to be high-end people. They didn't even get like a player sheet. They didn't get a background information. The coach didn't show up. If you don't know, before games, the coaches meet with the media and they have a conversation. Like you hear on the broadcast, yeah, on our sit down on Friday night, we had this conversation. We talked about how this was going to work out. Did not occur in this case. IMG did, but Bishop Sycamore did not. So they got fleeced. At one point, they said, quote, they likened the game to, quote, 4 and 5 star recruits playing against a JV team. To make this story kind of confusing, his head coach for IMG is Pepper Johnson. Head coach for Bishop Sycamore is Leroy Johnson. Can't tell which coach refused the running clock. It just says Johnson, which when they're both.
Too bad nobody was Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah. Kind of similar here. IMG scored 23 in the first quarter. They tried to call the game, but they refused. They tried to implement a running clock because it was that. After one quarter, it was that blatantly uneven, and they refused. And then ESPN just basically deuced on the game on air, which is...
You have to wonder if they ever found out whether or not Manti Te'o's girlfriend ended up going to Bishop Sycamore.
I'm just going to let that one linger for a second because, the Manti Te'o story. That, honestly, if you go back to ridiculous sporting stories, this is on par with that. A high-level college, still in the pros, I believe, high-level at the time college athlete, though, getting catfished with a fake girlfriend, and now ESPN getting catfished with a fake high school that somehow showed up and got run 58-0 against IMG.
One wonders, what's next?
As a result, Bishop Sycamore did have more games scheduled. All of the teams have backed out of those games, and there will be no more Bishop Sycamore going forward. This
maybe next we need a fake network to broadcast a fake school.
Honestly, there are definitely going to be some things coming out of this. One of which is that Kevin Hart has announced his production company will be making a docu-series on how the hell this happened. It will cover, quote, how the school and the game fooled the world and became front page news, unquote. So, for all of the craziness,
Kevin Hart, you have to go like that, right?
Yeah. For all the craziness we've done, that's something different. I've never seen a team get on ESPN that's not a real team. So, yeah.
I don't know that you had the Jaguars and the Jets were on ESPN all last year.
I think you have the Jaguars and the Jets on Thursday Night Football at some point this year, and they're marketing it as number 1 pick versus number 2 pick, which, if both stay healthy, it will be. You could also say it's the 2 biggest turds that are outside of Texas and not the Washington Turds, who will actually probably be a pretty decent team this year. Yeah, so we will move on. Before we go too much further, I do want to say next Wednesday. Okay.
I heard, I forget which show I was listening to, where somebody, I think, kiddingly suggested for the Washington team to be named the Wildflowers.
It'd be better than the Washington football team. That's why I called them the Turds, because they don't have a name. So next Wednesday, Tuesday, I think it will be Wednesday, we'll be back on going to our 2-time-a-week production. We will be talking about the upcoming season opener between the Bucks and the Cowboys. That will be next Thursday night.
That may or may not receive some coverage on a national level, I believe. Maybe just a little.
Yeah, I think it might make the national radar. And then after that, we will start our pick'em contest. The board behind me will no longer show drafts that are completed or upcoming. It will show how we're doing. We also did have a link on our page that is a pick pool, so you can pick against us. The picks that are in that pool for us may or may not be the same.
Picking your nose, but picking games.
Yes, the game picks on there may or may not be the same as what we pick on the air. So it'll be 2 different counts possibly. I think for the most part, those will agree, but it's possible they will be a little bit different. If anybody wants to join, challenge us, beat us, make us look like fools, the link is on the Facebook page, probably like 4 or 5 down from here. So we will be doing that. But again, that'll start Wednesday and probably Friday, or maybe like this on a Saturday afternoon. We'll just have to see how the scheduling works out. We'll do our picks Friday or Saturday.
Just for fun and bragging rights.
Yes. We will do our picks Friday or Saturday. We'll do our recap of the week, some of the top stories, and then look forward to the Thursday game on our Wednesday shows. And as we are coming towards the end of the off season, finally, we are coming to the end, sadly, of fantasy football draft season. Part of the reason we're doing this early today is I have one at 5:00 that just opened up. I have pick number 10. I'm at the back end. I have the wheel. So before we go too much further, I do want to ask a question of Joel. If you can pick your draft spot, what pick do you choose? Let's call it a 10-team league. What pick do you choose, 1 to 10? If I give you anyone you want.
Crazy. I know it's crazy. I think I would actually pick 10 so I could have the snake.
Okay.
The snake. And then I don't also have to deal with if it's the 1 pick, because if it's the 1 pick, everyone's going to say you need to do CMC. I mean, that's just like you 1 pick, you breathe, the sun is out, it's shining, you get CMC. And with the 10th pick, you actually have a little bit more freedom, because then you can go, okay, do I want to go RB heavy? Do I want to go WRB? Do I want to get a top tier QB? Do I want to get a top tier TE? So I think you tend to get a little bit more freedom, and you have to wait a long ass time. That's the only thing. But boom, when it's your time, boom, you get. It's like BOGO. It's like BOGO time. Boom, buy one get one.
Well, the reason I asked this is because the league I draft live, the little 2 series behind me, we do a draft game to pick the draft order. The winner of the league the year before picked. So our friend Casey picked a 2-pronged like tournament style approach between cornhole and a game called Foaling. I'm sure you've never heard of this, Joel, but what it is, you have 10 bowling pins set up on a pallet, a flat pallet, not one with the slots and rivets and all that. And then you throw a football from however far, and the first one to knock down all 10 is the winner. So Chris, who was on air with us during our draft on Friday night, he was part of this league. He and I tied for the most points, which was 6. It was basically we went 5-1 in our 6 games. I beat him in tiebreaker. I got my choice of pick, and I agreed with you, and I took the number 10 pick because I believe firmly picking number 1 has nothing but risk, because even if you get the number 1 guy, you've only hit on the value. And more often than not, the number 1 guy does not finish as the number 1 guy. So I'm like, you know what? No, I want 10. I knew Chris was wanting either 1 or 10. I'm like, cool. One of my biggest sources of competition is on the other end of the draft is me. I'm very, very happy with this. And just to go down my team, I'll do it if I can remember correctly, the order of the picks. First pick was Devontae Adams. Second pick, Antonio Gibson. Third pick was James Robinson. Fourth was Mike Evans. Fifth was Myles Gaskin. And that pick is the reason this jersey is now behind me. Sixth was, I believe, TJ Hawkinson. Seventh was Robbie Anderson. Zach Moss was somewhere in that range. Then Marquise Brown, Marquez Callaway was at one of the turns. Last pick of the draft. The final pick in a 10-team draft was Michael Gallup. Ended up with the Washington Turds defense and the Jason Sanders at kicker. I jumped a little early, took the defense at the wheel in 13 and 14 because I knew most of the players were going to have to take kicker and defense. So I did want to know where you fell on that. Any thoughts on that team as well? It was a fun little experience. And to win the draft game, the person who won the draft game last year finished, got the 10 pick, won the league. I'm hoping to repeat that.
Well, I took a little bit more look at the picture, of course, because when you sent it, it was like a little bit cut off and stuff. But I did definitely like the pick of Rogers and Adams. So that's the sort of one of those when you set up, you're like to myself, okay, that's good reality. That's also good fantasy.
Yes, I didn't mention Aaron Rodgers was. I think he might have been the 6th round pick. It was just one of those where, if I'm gonna go early, going for Aaron Rodgers when I already have Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers is slightly ticked off and wants to prove that he is still the best player in football, honestly. Number 3 in the NFL top 100, if anybody's curious. I think that's going to be very good because if they both stay healthy, it's very possible that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams break some records this year together.
That's a good merging of the dimensions of fantasy and reality together.
Yeah, so, I'm very high on Antonio Gibson. I've got him in a lot of leagues so far, and I think that's a good pick. James Robinson, since the injury to Travis Etienne, seems like a no-brainer. Jacksonville's not going to be a great team, but they're going to get games against Houston that are just awful. And, Myles Gaskin, I think, is a good backup. Philip Lindsay, Zach Moss. I got some of those guys I was real high on, Robbie Anderson, Marquise Brown, so I'm fairly happy with that draft.
Oh, and then I ended up having we ended up having the injuries that sort of came out of nowhere as they usually tend to do.
Yep.
I ended up having, of course, was not too badly affected by the Dobbins injury. The one that actually got me was the more not as high profile injury, Irv Smith, because I was like, oh, okay, Irv Smith. Well, let me check. Yeah, I had him both in the 10 team and in the 16 team. So that's like your tight end depth automatically is like wah, even though granted he wasn't considered, I think, starter material, but still, that's like you're going, there goes one of my dart throws, whans.
Yeah, fortunately, it is a dart throw. There were 3 big injuries in this offseason or the preseason. Irv Smith was probably the 3rd. Etienne was the 2nd. The biggest one was the Dobbins injury. J.K. Dobbins with a torn ACL out for the season. I have a startup dynasty team that had Gibson, Chris Carson, Etienne, and J.K. Dobbins. So that team is definitely hurting quite a bit to start the season. I've been working my butt off to try and make a trade for almost anyone that is a playable running back because I really only have those 2. My number 3 at this point is Tony Pollard. That is a problem because Tony Pollard is a backup. But that being said, I've got trade offers out right now for Sanders, Fournette. I've tried for Aaron Jones a couple times. I'm just throwing everything I can out there. Good news on this team is I have 9 picks in the draft next year, 3 in the first round, 2 in the second. So if I have a bad team, I'm going to get those 2 guys back in theory next year and 3 early draft picks. So it's a solid team. Injuries could be a big problem this year, but unfortunately, that was not the only place I had Dobbins, but Dobbins was able to be cut. Unfortunately, Gus Edwards was drafted everywhere, even before the Dobbins injury, and I don't know why.
Just one of those things, you just sort of going, huh?
Yeah, so breaking news, not anything major, but Tannehill is now off the COVID list. He will be able to start for the Titans week number 1. He did actually have COVID, so that means he's tested negative, which is a good sign for Tennessee in general because they had a couple other people test positive as well.
Yeah, I saw on blurb about Jamison Crowder testing, at least on the COVID list.
Yeah, he is tested positive. I don't have him anywhere. I did pull him out of my Yahoo Cup fantasy thing because I'm like, oh, he's dirt cheap and he's going to be playing Carolina, who's terrible. So, yeah. All right, so Joel, I know you found a list, and then I kind of want to go over what we're looking forward to for this season. So let's do your ADP list. I don't know who you're going to bring up in this, but you did mention you had this list.
All right, the actually biggest risers in ADP. This is from Underdog Fantasy over the last 10 weeks and put out by NFL 32 beat writers on Twitter, giving proper credit where credit is due. Starting off at the very bottom, we have Marquise Callaway rising up 123 spots.
That makes a lot of sense with Mike Thomas out. I think, again, once Jameis Winston got the starting job, the receiving depth or the receivers in general just got a shot in the arm because you can trust Jameis Winston to throw the ball. He may occasionally throw it to the wrong team, but he does definitely throw the ball better than Taysom Hill ever did.
LASIK.
And he looked great in the preseason. Marquez Callaway looked like he had a great connection, and he was not being drafted. He was a garbage pick, and then all of a sudden he had a big preseason game with 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and everybody went, ooh, I want Marquez Callaway, which is why I took him in that live draft that I just brought up later. I took him with Marquise Brown, who I've been very high as a sleeper on. So I got the possible number 1 wide receiver for New Orleans for at least the first 6 weeks. Michael Thomas is on the PUP list, and with his last 18 months of history where he has not been 100% healthy or very serious about playing, more about the crybaby game, maybe he stays the number 1 even after Mike Thomas comes back, if Mike Thomas comes back.
Next name definitely involved in a recent trade, Sony Michel, up 108 spots flying.
Yeah, Sony Michel, another person that was going mostly undrafted before he got traded to the Rams. The Rams, of course, did lose Cam Akers to an Achilles injury. Another guy I was high on Dobbins, Akers, and Gibson this year. 2 of the 3 have already been injured. Cam Akers was out for the season a few weeks back. They have Darrell Henderson, who had a thumb injury, who is not very impressive. They have a couple other people that nothing really looked good. So they went out and got Sony Michel. Michel should get some work here. He should have at least an opportunity to take the starting job from Darrell Henderson. It is a 1-year deal, but he's going to a team that's got a upgraded quarterback with Matt Stafford over Jared Goff. He's got decent weapons on the outside. He's going to have the opportunity. If he makes the most of it, it could be a great fit. I wouldn't count on him, but it's definitely worth drafting at this point.
Another name, maybe not quite as a sexy name, but Jacoby Myers up 68 spots.
Yeah, Jacoby is I got him in our 16-teamer as a depth wide receiver. He's been linked as the number 1 quarterback or number 1 wide receiver for the new number 1 quarterback, Mac Jones. Of course, Cam Newton released over the weekend. That was a fun thing to hear about when you're in New England, oddly enough. I'll let you know how New England feels. They were surprised, but they understood. Because Cam Newton just nothing exciting there. But Jacoby Myers was good last year with Cam Newton. He is emerging as a good threat. Nelson Aguilar is really the only other receiver there. And it seems like Myers is taking control of the opportunity. And if Mac Jones has a good connection with him, he's going to be a good fit. He could be a steal. He's not going early. He's someone that in some leagues will still go undrafted. But in a deep league like our 16-teamer, I thought he was an absolute steal. And I think it was around 12 or 13.
Next name on the list, that would be one Darrell Henderson, up 65 spots.
This kind of is the same as the Sony Michel thing. Once Cam Akers got hurt, he rose up. And I'm sure these ADPs are from, way back to now where the differences are. But Darrell Henderson is inconsistent. He's got some injury concerns. He's going to at least start the season as the number 1 running back in a good offense. Like I said, Sony Michel, if he gets the opportunity, could be a very good fit. Darrell Henderson, I think, will get the opportunity, should be a very good fit as well. Not a whole lot of difference for me between those two. It's just who's going to get the lion's share of the carries and which one's going to be the backup. That's going to determine which one's the better pick.
Next name that I'm not going to screw up too badly, Ramondre Stevenson, up 59 points.
Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson, he got a kick for a few reasons. 1, he is a Patriots running back, and Sony Michel just got traded away. 2, he's had a fantastic preseason. He was honestly, to me, I think he was the best player, period, in the preseason. That being said, it is the preseason. He was playing against backups. Damian Harris is still the starter, but the name has a lot of buzz. He's more of a dynasty play for me. I've got him in at least one dynasty format right now. With that in mind, he could, with one injury, be the number one, and he looked fantastic in the preseason. Deserves to be going up the board, but probably not someone I'm going to draft in a redraft. It's someone that keep an eye on the waivers. If something happens to Harris, he's going to be a hot commodity.
And here's a name you definitely will recognize, especially this year, up 55 spots. One, Gus Edwards.
Yep. And again, all of these kind of have some kind of a link to a change. This one, the J.K. Dobbins injury. Gus Edwards has been a fantastic Baltimore Ravens running back for 3 years. He just never has been given the full workload between Ingram, Dobbins, obviously Lamar Jackson having great running ability. The Ravens have been in the last 2 years, the number 1 and number 4 all-time rushing offense. Gus Edwards now is the number 1. He's going to get a ton of carries. If he stays healthy, he is going to go absolutely crazy. I was super high on J.K. Dobbins before he got hurt, so I am very high on Gus Edwards. I don't know if I would draft him where he's going because he went at pick 12 in our live draft that we did for a little too serious. When I do this next draft here in about 45 minutes, I'll be interested to see how far he goes. I'm trying to find out where he's projecting to go right now. I am not seeing him. Let's see. Gus. Where is Gus? Gus is right now projected at 51st. So that's a 5th round, 6th round pick. At that point, he's an absolute steal. Pick 12, maybe a little rich, but I think where Dobbins was going, 2nd or 3rd, late 2nd, early 3rd, into the 4th, about the right spot. So if you can get Gus Edwards later, that's an absolute steal as well.
Next name would be one Randall Cobb, up 50 spots from the ADP.
All right, this is the first one that I don't quite understand why he's rising. Yes, he went back to Green Bay. Yes, he went back to Aaron Rodgers. But you still have Devontae Adams, who's going to be the unquestioned number 1. You still have Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who have been serviceable wide receivers. They have the rookie Amari Rodgers, who could step up. And you still have Robert Tonyan, who was very good last year. So I don't know if Randall Cobb's going to be up in the offense well enough to be draftable, to be playable. I don't know if he even got picked in our 16-team league, but he was toxic. He was not even worth considering when he was with the Texans. He was not worth considering when he was a free agent, obviously. But now that he's back with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, he could have some potential weeks. I think he may be a daily play. But someone to keep an eye on waivers. I wouldn't draft him. I just think there's too many weapons in Green Bay to fall that far for Cobb.
And along the same lines, MVS up 49 ADP spots.
Yeah, MVS, I think, is a result because, again, a lot of these ADPs that you see are from the start of the fantasy draft season, which can be as far back as April after the NFL draft until now. So MVS could have started almost undraftable or very, 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 very late. And now you go, well, Aaron Rodgers is back. When Aaron Rodgers came back, everybody on that team bumped up. Aaron Jones jumped up. Devontae Adams jumped up a full round or so. When Aaron Rodgers was out, Devontae Adams was probably a late 2nd round pick. So I took him at 10. And I don't take receivers.
Sort of felt like it was Aaron Rodgers was doing his thing like The Rock. Finally, Aaron Rodgers has come back.
Yeah, so when he came back, that's going to bump MVS up. MVS has explosive potential. He will have weeks where he goes for 4 catches, 142 yards, and 2 touchdowns because he gets 2 long bombs. And if you have him in a daily format, that is a winner of the week. That's someone who can actually make you some money in that case. But for redraft, again, I think there's just too much there. He should be going, if at all, at the very end of drafts. But again, someone should end up on waivers. But he has moved up because Aaron Rodgers is back.
Winner, chicken parm dinner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and heading to the almost to the end, 3 more to go with list. We have the first of 2 Williams on the list, Tyson Williams, up 45 ADP spots.
Tyson Williams is with the Baltimore Ravens. Going back to the injury to J.K. Dobbins, he is now the backup. He's leapfrogged Justice Hill, which is unfortunate because I went out and got Justice Hill where I had J.K. Dobbins. Anyways, he's jumped up to be the backup. So if something happens to Gus Edwards, he will be the starter. Or if there is a split of any kind, Tyson Johnson will get enough of the carries. Again, number 1 and number 4 rushing team of all time in the last 2 seasons. Tyson Johnson will have the Gus Edwards role, and Gus Edwards was borderline serviceable with J.K. Dobbins in the fold. Without him, it could be enough to get Tyson Johnson in some lineups.
And not the last entry, but the definitely last Williams, that would be Damian Williams at 43 spots up in the ADP.
Now, I actually have to make sure I got this right because there's a Damian and there's a few other Williams. I'm pretty sure Damian Williams is now with the Chicago Bears. Just making 100% sure. Yes, with the Chicago Bears.
Do they still suck?
They do still suck. As long as they have Matt Nagy, they will still suck. He is now with the Chicago Bears. He will be the backup to David Montgomery. David Montgomery should be the number one, unquestioned. Tariq Cohen, though, coming back from a knee injury last year, is on the PUP list to start the season. So this is at least 6 weeks he's not available. Damian Williams may get some of that work that would typically fall to Tariq Cohen behind Montgomery. This is not someone you want to count on unless Montgomery gets hurt. If Montgomery gets hurt, go grab him because he's going to be the number one. But he's rising because, one, he fell in a situation where he is the clear number two. And if something happens to the number one, he's going to be counted on because Andy Dalton, not a great quarterback. Justin Fields might be the best quarterback they've ever drafted, but he's still a rookie, and that's a very low bar if you know what Chicago's drafted a quarterback. I think they're going to lean on the running game either way. So if it's not Montgomery because Montgomery gets hurt, Damian Williams could be a great pickup.
And the final ADP riser on the list, that would be up 43 spots. That would be J-Rob.
Yeah. James Robinson, going back again to the injury pool. Travis Etienne and James Robinson were both going in around the 7th round before. Now Etienne is out, and I said earlier, I took him in the 3rd round with pick number 30, and I was very, very happy he fell that far. I figured he would go before that. So injuries are going to play a lot into this ADP, but the opportunity that this one gets, this is the first one I will say, you want to go and target this guy. He was a top 5 running back last season as a rookie on a team that's arguably better now than they were last season. So I would say you're good if you go and get James Robinson in the 3rd round. If you can get him later, that's great, but I wouldn't risk it. If you're looking at him at the end of the 3rd round, just take him. Something will be there in round 4, but he may not be.
All right. So are you ready for the 5 players to see whether or not you agree to avoid or you will disagree with it and you say go ahead and pick them up anyway?
All right. So these 5 are people you want to avoid.
Right. And we'll see if Ryan agrees with the fact that you should avoid them.
All right.
Player number 1, wide receiver on the New York Giants, who just signed a 4-year, $72 million contract. Comes to New York with 2 top 20 finishes, 4 years in Detroit. That would be one Kenny Golladay. Do you agree he is somebody you should avoid it this year, Flying?
I will say, and I'm going to say this about this entire list before we go too far. At the right price, everybody is an option. I have drafted Kenny Golladay. I drafted him in our Vampire League, but I drafted him with almost my last pick. It was only, I think, a 12-pick draft. So I do have a share of Kenny Golladay, but I got him super late. At his normal ADP, where he's going in the 6th round, that seems a little rich for someone who's coming off of knee injuries. Right now, like I said, I do have Kenny Golladay. He is my number 5 wide receiver on this roster, behind Woods, Anderson, number 4, behind Woods, Anderson, Marquise Brown, and Kenny Golladay. That's my receiving core. So Kenny Golladay, my number 4, and I don't love it, but it was one of those in a Vampire League. I'm like, I can't leave someone that talented on the board. I wouldn't normally draft a Kenny Golladay type just because the injury history lately has been very bleak. So at his ADP, yes, definitely avoid. If he falls to like the 10th, go for it. Take a chance.
All right, we're staying on the same team, going to a different position that definitely had a lot of letters pop up in his name and not ones that you like, usually hearing with a running back, ACL, MCL, and of course, meniscus. We are definitely talking about one Saquon Barkley. Even though his potential is insane, would you avoid drafting Saquon Barkley this year, Flying?
Again, at his ADP, I think I would, even though all signs are pointing that he's going to be good to go. It's just tough to come back, and you heard a lot of the offseason talk. Oh, he might not be ready for week one. He might be on a snap count. He may be on a carry count. He's not going to get the full workload. At that point, you go, well, am I going to really take him in the first or early second round? In our live draft, my wife, first year in the league, took him at pick number 8. And she had Saquon Barkley last year. So she put a lot of trust that he was going to be good. Everybody's actually really happy with the draft. So, good job there. I wouldn't do it. I was pretty happy that she took him, because if he'd have fallen to me at 10, I would have had a hard decision, especially if someone would have taken Adams or Gibson, who I ended up taking. I think he's a late second round pick to me, just because there's a lot of risk. And at that point, he's an absolute steal if he plays to his normal level. But he's been in the league now 3 years. He's really only had one great season. His rookie season was fantastic. His second season, I had him. He was a massive disappointment, but he had a great end of the season, which kind of left a good taste in the mouth of fantasy managers. Then obviously year 3 with the knee injury. He's only had one great year. I would avoid him at the ADP that he's going at. I would say he's probably 15 to 20 where he should be drafted. He's going before that, so I would avoid him there. Not an all-out, don't get him at any cost, but not where he's going.
All right, we're going to switch teams now, going to your Miami Dolphins. And gentlemen seemed to get into a little bit of suspension trouble last year. Yeah, he's now off of the suspension, of course, but with a question of you had the one side of Will Fuller's success. Deshaun Watson, who of course is going through his own drama this year, is no longer in the picture. How is he going to how's he going to gel and get any kind of chemistry with, of course, with Tua or whomever happens to be quarterback with the Dolphins? And is Will Fuller one of those players that you grab or you tend to steer away from if they come up to your pick in the draft?
I don't have any shares of Will Fuller at this time, other than Dynasty Leagues where I've already had him. He does still have one game on his suspension from last year. He will miss week 1 against the Patriots. After that, though, that's not a big thing. He's going late enough in drafts where you can take that chance. He's not going in the 5th, 6th round. He's going round 8, round 9, round 10, where Devontae Parker's going, who should be a very good option. I don't know if you watched any Dolphins football in the preseason. Tua Tagovailoa has looked fantastic when he's been on the field. I'm confident that he's going to take a step in the right direction. There's enough weapons where Fuller should get some good opportunity. It's not an avoid to me. It's not someone I'm going to target early. It's someone that I'm going to wait until the 8th, 9th round to even consider. But if he falls to that point, yeah, I don't think he's an avoid at all.
Okay.
Wide receiver 4 on your team. I think that's the right role for him.
And we're going from a wide receiver. Now we're going back over to a running back. And of course, James Conner is a story, of course, off the field, dealing with the Hodgkin's lymphoma, overcoming that. Just, you definitely have to, take the hat off to him. Endless amount of time for anybody who has to deal with that. But of course, on the field, he's had multiple MCL injuries, a high ankle injury, concussion, shoulder injury, and then of course re-injured his shoulder after returning too soon. He signed a 1-year deal, $1.75 million with Arizona, and he has an opportunity to prove that he can still be a viable threat. But if he comes to you in your pick of the draft, do you pull a lever and take him?
I don't. I'm actually avoiding the Arizona running back situation entirely. James Conner may or may not have a big role there. Chase Edmonds is technically the incumbent at this point. He may be worth drafting. Chase Edmonds may be worth drafting, I should say. But I just don't know where that's going to shake out. Is it going to be something where it's close to a 50-50 split? Because at that point, neither one of them is really viable, because it's going to depend on who gets the touchdown. And that's not something you're going to be able to predict in the 50-50 timeshare. I think it's more likely than not Chase Edmonds is the starter and James Conner is the backup. And if that's the case, then no, you don't draft a backup running back if you're something you're going to have to count on. So I am definitely out on James Conner, but I'm also out on Chase Edmonds just because of the ambiguity in the situation in Arizona.
And the last name, a name that we have heard quite a lot about this past couple of weeks, New Orleans. You know where I'm going when I toss out the name. I don't need to do any more fanfare other than just saying Michael Thomas.
Yes, avoid him. I would avoid him on the simple fact that he's coming off an ankle injury that's had him out of commission for the better part of a year, let alone the poor attitude. I think once.
So you don't even consider him a viable WR3 or WR4?
No, in our live draft, he went the pick before Marquez Callaway in the 9th or 10th round. So he went very, very late in that draft. If he comes back fully healthy
is
with
he
the right
even
mentality,
considered a dart throw if he's still on the board?
Oh, he's a dart throw. And I'll say this, if he comes back after the 6 weeks, because again, on the pup list, for sure out 6 weeks. If you can hold him on your roster for 6 weeks and he comes back and he's the old Michael Thomas, the Drew Brees 150 catch a season Michael Thomas, then you've got one of the steals of the draft in the 9th or 10th round where he's going. But I don't think his attitude's there. I don't think his mentality's right. I don't think he really wants to play football. I think that's why he waited to get this ankle surgery till June when he could have done it in January or February and been ready for the season. I just don't trust it. I don't think he's realistically going to come back and be the old Michael Thomas. Again, I think Marquez Callaway may retain the number one role with Jameis Winston when he comes back. If he's got that rapport with Winston, he's not going to sell, oh, Michael Thomas is here. I got to make sure I don't throw what's been working and give it to this guy who's been out because he couldn't do a surgery at the right time. So I'm out on him. I don't like drafting injured players if I can avoid it. Just on principle, but let alone the attitude, the fact that it took him so long to get the surgery to begin with when he had the ankle injury in September of last year, just seems foolish. So with that, I think that's going to take us to our final thoughts for today. I've got a half hour before my draft, so we do have a little bit of time to go over whatever we're going to do. But Joel, I have a feeling your final thoughts is going to be more sports related than mine, so let's have you go first.
Well, I'll tell you that it's just unbelievable that tying back into what we were talking about with, of course, Bishop Sycamore on September 4th, 2020, they ended up playing their first recorded football game on Max Preps, losing 35-0 to a non-conference opponent. As I just figured I'd toss that out there, considering where we started with Bishop Sycamore. I figured it would be a good circular logic thing to close with. One of the weirdest, craziest stories I think I've had in recent memory.
Yes. Mine's going to be a little more personal. Part of the reason I just started like moving randomly is that I got criticism from my grandmother on how I act on the show because I move. I'm a little more animated than Joel. And sometimes like there are times I'll reach over here and I'll like right now kind of go out of frame because I'm picking up a notebook. There's nothing on this one today, but normally I have notes that are saying what I'm going to do. So I might be going over here to pick something up or over here to get something. So there's a reason for it, but just knowing that it bothers her, I like doing this now. But I've been trying to behave and be perfectly still just for her. She also said that I need to comb my hair, so that's why I just decided to say I'm going to wear a hat, even though my hair was fine at the time.
It's too bad we can't digitally change you around to have you like bounce around like Max Headroom, because that would be absolutely perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, that's criticism from my grandmother who finally got to watch the show now with our YouTube page. My mom did reach out on the Thursday show before our drafts last week. And then after our draft shows, my brother, who is in Pennsylvania, not involved with the flooding that has been catastrophic up there, fortunately. Yeah, immediately was like, "Hey, give me some sleepers for this position. Give me sleepers for that position." I'm like, "All right, let's do this."
You know it's pretty bad when you see like interstates that are flooded. That's
Yeah,
not normal.
yeah. And normally, I'm very happy to talk to my brother. I'm very happy to give sleeper information. After drafting for 4 hours, it was like, "Oh, okay, all right. Well, let's do this." Okay, because I don't know about you, Joel. After that 16 team draft last week, I was pretty good with not thinking about football for at least 5 minutes, and I did not get that, but it's all right. I basically gave the same information I've given for sleepers. Marquise Brown. I told him, early round, you're looking, Gibson, this, that, and the other. Everything we've already talked about. We did our sleepers and busts for all these positions last week. So if you want that information again, go check it out over there. We're not going to rehash it here, but yeah, just a lot of criticism from the family lately, and my mom saying she loved me. So yeah. With that being said, that's my final thought. Hey, at least we got people finally watching at least a little bit. Hey, it's okay.
Yeah, that's better than being like the Wayne and Garth of sports podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 150, 200 people on the Facebook page now, and us on the YouTube page, but the YouTube page is new.
That's always exciting
we'll
when
push
you
that out.
It's always exciting when you see a like pop and it's not yours. You're like, yay! Hey,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yay.
I think we've got like 10 minutes of viewing on YouTube, which is mostly my grandmother. So thank you for that. Still far from the maybe we can go get monetized goal that I have in mind somewhere in the back of my head, but
Just a bit outside.
hey, it's a brand new page. We're going to put a lot of content out there. Maybe, just maybe, someone will possibly throw us $5 at some point just to do this. Anyways, that is it. We'll be back, I believe, next Wednesday. Last show before actual games start. Yeah, we'll be talking about the Bucks Cowboys season opener. We'll be talking about what we're looking forward to with the
It will be
NFL
time
season.
to absolutely completely overreact to everything that happens in the first week.
Yep, we'll make our full season picks, including Super Bowl projections. We'll do all that stuff on Wednesday. We'll pick our first game of the season.
Some team will win the Super Bowl. That's my official prediction.
I agree with that pick immensely. But we'll do that on Wednesday, and then Friday or Saturday, we'll be back with our week 1 picks in full. And with that being said, just for you, Grandma, we gone!